Welcome to America Uncanceled. I'm Mercedes Schlapp. Well, there's just 68 days left until the midterms. Will Republicans take back the Senate? Well, we need a conservative Senate to block Biden's leftist and failed policies. Polling is now showing Dr. Mehmet Oz within striking distance in Pennsylvania. His race is not only important for a Republican majority, but also to stop John Fetterman from having any power. Fetterman has supported decriminalizing all drugs, including heroin. He's killing fracking jobs, and he's not going to stop until he continues to raise taxes and oppose school choice. Fetterman is also refusing to debate Dr. Oz. The Democrat had a stroke and now brings his wife to every speaking event. Is he fit to serve in office? Or is he like, I don't know, a president we know, Joe Biden? Well, Biden, meanwhile, is in Pennsylvania today to deliver yet another speech where he calls Republicans terrorists, extremists. Talk about a unifier? I don't think so. Well, let's get right to it. Joining me now is Dr. Mehmet Oz. Obviously, Dr. Oz, you all know him. He is working day in and day out to win this very important Senate race in Pennsylvania. Dr. Oz, thanks for joining me.
I'm glad to be with you. I got to say, campaigning around Pennsylvania gets you very optimistic about the future of the country. People here know exactly what they want to do. They just don't want the federal government involved in what they're up to.
Well, you know, that's interesting that you bring that up. I do have to say that all I hear all the time is that you are like the happy conservative warrior. You're the happy warrior that wants to get the job done. But you've got this opponent out there who, I don't know what it is. Is he just afraid to get out of the basement of his parents' home or something? Because he does not want to debate you. You have committed to 5 moderated debates across Pennsylvania. Where's Fetterman?
He's hiding, and he makes different excuses. He most recently said he didn't have time, and then he said it was because we weren't respecting his stroke issues. And I've said over and over again, as a physician, I have tremendous empathy for what it's like to recover from a stroke. And so I'll work with John Fetterman, try to find a way for him to get comfortable getting on a debate stage. I haven't been engaged by him at all. But if the real reason he's not debating is because he's unable or unwilling to defend his far left radical positions, once he's made public many, many times, that's something that I won't accept. And I don't think the voters of Pennsylvania are going to like very much. And I think that's one of the reasons that he's feeling a lot of pressure right now. And democracy is built on hearing the questions of your voters and reporters and your opponent and being able to answer them. And if he's unwilling to go out publicly and answer questions or debate me, then it calls into question his suitability to be a senator. That's
a great point. And I do agree. I do believe that debates actually can make or break an election. We saw this in the recent election here in Virginia with Terry McAuliffe, where he basically said that parents, they shouldn't be involved in children's education, that it's all about the teachers doing this. And then I think that was a very pivotal moment for now Governor Glenn Youngkin. So I do agree that debates play a critical role, especially for those undecided voters right now in Pennsylvania. But I do want to play a clip of Fetterman on the campaign trail and get your reaction.
And you can count on us to eliminate the filibuster if you come out and step with us. We will be able to stand with you in D.C. I gave away the lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania, the only lieutenant governor in the history to do that. And let's get some stuff done for America. Who would ever think that I would be the normal one in the race here, with that?
So that's Fetterman on the campaign trail. It just feels like he can't really finish off the sentences. The energy is low. Do you believe that Fetterman is fit to serve in office?
I can't tell. He's not released his medical records. I've had no interaction with him personally, and I haven't seen much of him, even in videos. So he's got to come clean. I think the transparency that we all demand in our elected officials is essential here. He's not been very forthcoming. I've offered to be supportive as I can as a physician, but he's got to come out and talk about these far left radical positions in a way that allows voters to decide if he's capable of serving. But I got to say, I'm more concerned about the crazy ideas he has in his head than his ability to go out there and argue for the things that he desires, but he's got to show up. And one of the things that sort of surprised me is the amount of money pouring into his campaign from the coast, from people who know him very well. They just want to get an extra seat for the Democratic Party. And it's one of the reasons I'm encouraging everyone listening, go to droz.com and chip in $10. Let's make sure that we show up on election day having described exactly who John Fetterman is. And to do that, you actually have to be able to run ads and tell your story. And one of the reasons Democrats have been able to change the narrative is they have the press on their side. So they manufacture these stories which aren't accurate about where we are as a party. We will win my race. We're going to win in other states. We're going to take the Senate back. We need to stay enthusiastic and focused on our message, which is we have the best ideas to get America where it was 2 years ago, back to an inflation rate that was tolerable, thoughtful policies on energy so we're not hurting ourselves. Crime is a big issue here in Pennsylvania. My opponent, John Fetterman, says he wants to release 1/3 of all prisoners. Think about that. 1/3 of all prisoners. Plus, he doesn't believe in life sentences. And he also has this thing about drugs. He wants them completely legalized, all drugs. And we're sitting in the worst murder epidemic ever in Philadelphia, with parts of the city taken over by zombies with needles sticking out of their neck from being heroin addicts. And this is not a path forward for this Commonwealth or the country. Yet John Fetterman, that's what he thinks.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking to me because I've spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania campaigning for President Trump. And really, I just love going into your state. But what it shocks me is the fact that Fetterman could be doing so well, knowing that his agenda is so radicalized. I mean, he is beyond a Bernie bro, okay? Like, he is just with those progressives like Elizabeth Warren, like AOC. I just don't think where he stands on the issues reflects the values of the people of Pennsylvania. Let's take education, for example. He opposes school choice. Talk to me about his energy policies, where he is on the economy. It keeps sounding to me that it's about tax hikes, killing jobs, and really putting, I think, more people in Pennsylvania basically in the hands of the government, which it's just not where I would see Pennsylvania headed towards.
Well, you've got a pretty good grasp of the situation. He's called fracking a stain on Pennsylvania. He's moved for a moratorium on fracking. He thinks we need to regulate it down. And I'm looking at why he supports the Green New Deal. And as a scientist, I can't understand the arguments here. We don't have the ability in America right now to move the way that he thinks the Green New Deal would allow us to move. Certainly not in that time frame. We would have to sell ourselves to China to get batteries to do the things they want to do. I'm for an all of the above energy policy. Let us continue to use natural gas, which is a very clean source of energy to power our economy. Keep us energy dominant so our leadership can message that to our allies overseas and push back on our enemies. But also having energy, which is abundant here in Pennsylvania, pulled out of the ground allows us to drop inflation rates significantly, probably drops 1/3 of inflation. And it also has the added benefit here of creating great paying jobs for communities that otherwise get abandoned. And when Fetterman calls fracking a stain on Pennsylvania, he's actually insulting many people who make their living in that sector. And I think it makes no sense. He also, by the way, says we should send law enforcement after the leaders of energy companies in order to hold them accountable for the energy prices, when the real driver of energy prices is clearly the fact that we're blocked all drilling on federal lands, and we're messaging to all the energy businesses they should not produce more energy, or else we might arbitrarily shut it down with some legal issue. So no one trusts the government. Deal with the real problems. Don't manufacture problems and then blame people caught in the middle.
And the Democrats believe that climate change is their religion, putting the American worker behind. And I think for Pennsylvania, that's a huge problem as well. Let's tackle this inflation problem a little bit more here. As we know, the inflation continues to grow. This is going to lead to what I believe will be job loss as recession takes hold in this country. Recession takes hold in states like Pennsylvania. And 2/3 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Dr. Oz, what do you think we can do knowing that the Democrats have spent so much of their time, especially on the Hill here in the swamp, spending a lot of money that we don't have, knowing that we're going to have to raise taxes? I mean, what can you do as senator, as you move into this role, to make sure that we're able to basically stop these failed economic policies coming from Joe Biden and his Democrat cronies?
Well, I'll tell you a quick story about a woman who bought a diner up in Erie, Pennsylvania, a beautiful part of the Commonwealth. And I asked her, what can I do to help? If I was in the U.S. Senate, what can I do to make your diner function better? And she looked at me very drolly as she poured my coffee, said, "Stay out of my way." I think that's one of the big messages for Washington to hear. Don't try to micromanage everything in every state. Get out of the way. Don't spend people's money. Don't spend our children's money. One of the realities of my race is my opponent, Fetterman, believes Biden didn't go far enough. He thought we should spend more money. We would have even have a higher inflation rate besides the 40-year high that we're experiencing right now. We have to be thoughtful about our country's budget, just like you would be careful with your family budget, your home budget. We can't keep spending money because it puts us at a serious disadvantage, and countries like China can take advantage of us. And it's not just inflation, it's devaluation. We could actually have a massive reduction in the value of our dollar, which would really hurt our economy. And much of the money that's being spent isn't making life better for a lot of Americans. Like this giveaway on the payoffs on education loans. What if you're a person who couldn't go to college, you didn't have the money to get there, didn't want to go to college? Now the plumbers are paying the tuitions of the lawyers. It's the complete opposite. And what if you went to college and paid your debt back? You look like a fool because your buddy didn't pay it back. He was out partying it up, didn't study or didn't get a job that paid his debt back. And now he gets his debt paid off. And what's going to happen in the future? Is anyone going to ever pay their student loans back if they know they might get forgiven a couple of years from now? I still remember vividly ripping off my last coupon in my little student loan booklet and mailing in the check with it and feeling such a sense of accomplishment.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. I mean, my parents were the same way. They helped me get through college and you know, we didn't have to pay loans. We just paid it off and did the right thing. And I just think it's just ridiculous that, first of all, some of these universities don't even step in to help more of these low income students. And secondly, that President Biden decided, well, let me move this through an executive order to try to solve this student loan problem. But of course, it really only truly benefits a majority of these white collar students that are attending these very fancy schools. Let me get your reaction to this as well. As we know, President Biden is really trying to change the narrative of progressives like AOC and Fetterman and saying, no, we support law enforcement. We're going to fund the police. And you mentioned earlier about crime in big cities like Philadelphia. I mean, you're watching these homicides happen, the murder rates, the burglaries in this area. I mean, what can we do? I mean, what is the truth behind this? What can we do to make sure that we can decrease crimes in these big cities?
Well, when I was getting the Fraternal Order of Police endorsement, and it happened just 2 weeks ago, I was pitching why I was understanding of the challenges faced by the officers. And it was pretty clear to me that all of them want respect. I mean, they don't feel like they're doing work that's important and being respected for having taken that risk. My opponent, for example, who was in Harrisburg, he's a lieutenant governor, the head of their police group, an African-American woman, stood up and said, he treats me like I'm something stuck to the bottom of his shoe when you walk out of a dog park. And there was a ripple through the audience as other leaders around the Commonwealth said, my goodness, that's exactly it. Who wants to risk your life running towards a crisis to be told you're no good or to be accused of doing wrong things when you get there? Yeah. So we don't have enough police officers in Pennsylvania. Philadelphia is a good example, the city with the highest, its highest murder rate ever. Can't hire police officers. Nobody wants to work in a city where folks around you don't respect what you're up to. And I think we have Democratic leadership who has messaged that over and over again with defund the police movements and criticism of every little move that's made in the desire to keep the community safe. And the people who pay the price when you don't enforce the rules are the people who live in those communities. Many African Americans inside of Philadelphia say they feel like they're part of a social experiment conducted by white woke people who go home at the end of the day and hide out in their suburban homes while the African Americans got to deal with the crisis in their backyard. And I went to med school at Penn and business school at Wharton, so I was in school in Philly for a while. I could ride my bike to school. It was safe. Yeah. You can't do that right now.
Yeah, that feels the same way here in Washington, D.C. as well, where you just don't feel safe in these big cities. I do want to talk about poll numbers. You know, of course, polls are just in how we're trending in terms of many of these campaigns. Sometimes we can throw these polls basically in the garbage can. But there was a recent story in Breitbart basically saying that you're in striking distance of far left Fetterman in this Pennsylvania Senate race. When I was going through this poll, what was interesting to me is that you have got about 7% of these respondents that are undecided or supporting a different candidate. And in a separate poll, Dr. Oz, you're basically beating Fetterman with independents drawing 50% and 40% of these demographics, which I think is a very important number to get, are those independent voters. Give me a sense, because all I'm hearing in the liberal media is that Fetterman is way ahead. He's got a over 75% chance of winning the Senate seat. What say you?
I'm going to win the Senate seat. And I've learned something very important on this campaign, which is the liberal media creates a narrative that chills the enthusiasm of Republicans. It's a very powerful idea. Make it seem like the race is not really a close one, or that the leadership of the Republican Party is not really endorsing the candidate, or the candidate can't get out of his own way. And when you do that, you actually notice something fascinating. People don't get excited about the possibilities of what could happen because they don't believe it's possible that it could happen. And I'm here to say without any question, what I just described is not true. Leader McConnell, all in, $34 million into my race. Forget about what the press is saying. He's actually voting with his pocketbook. Without question, Rick Scott's been supportive, bringing millions of dollars into the state. I put a lot of money in myself. We've got a robust grassroots effort of people contributing. And by the way, DrOz.com, again, is the website if you want to make a contribution. Even if it's small, it really adds up quickly. This is how we win these races. And so if we can define Fetterman as being as far left as he really is, and the average voter in Pennsylvania appreciates it, they're going to vote for me. Here's the question. It's all going to come down to the simple question on the 8th of November. Do you think we're headed in the right direction?
Yeah.
And if you think, if the person says who you're talking to that we're headed in the right direction, take their driver's license away, because there's obviously something going on.
Yeah, and great point. Great point that you bring that up, because when you look at the poll numbers, it's over 70% of Americans that say we're heading in the wrong direction. And in essence, I agree with you. I do think it stands with that. And you also really, people need to ask themselves, and I bring this up even with conservatives that, that have been a little more critical of you, saying, well, wait a sec, what is Dr. Oz? Where does he stand? Well, here's the deal. This is what we need to know. Fetterman is not an option. We cannot have Fetterman in the Senate. It is like having a mean Bernie Sanders in there. Okay. It is about having another Elizabeth Warren in there that's only going to push this radicalized agenda. What I've known about you, Dr. Oz, is you're going to fight. And what I know about you is you're going to be a strong, independent voice in there, that you'll stand up when you need to stand up, and even raise questions in terms of Republicans if you think it's not, going in the right direction. And we need those independent, strong, conservative voices in there as well. I want to get your reaction to that in terms of, as you're visiting these different towns and cities, in essence of where you're saying, here's why you need to vote for me.
Well, without question, you need allies, and the Republican Party's got to come together. The other Senate candidates have joined me in unison, making sure everyone in Pennsylvania appreciates that we're all in this together. It's great to have national leaders do the same. My message when I campaign is very straightforward. I understand the values of Pennsylvania. I appreciate the pain that so many are discussing around the kitchen room table, and I'll address those issues by being smart about how we spend our money. No more reckless spending. I understand we need an all of the above energy policy. I believe that we can have safe city streets, that we can have a closed border and allow legal immigration, which is critical. And I know a lot about it because my dad was an immigrant. We're here and we live the American dream because my father realized that if you came here and took care of other Americans and worked your hardest and did your best to help America, you'd be an American. And so we want that. We want parents and their values expressed in schools, and we want our healthcare system to function. And I believe everyone should have their own doctor. These are realities that are achievable, but we're only going to get there if we're laser focused on what the opponents are saying and contrasting what we believe in with what they believe in. I believe my path forward, which is what the Republicans around the country have confidence in, will work because it has worked. And we need to make sure that is the vision that is seen by all of our voters, including the independents.
So let me ask you, you have this, this incredible business. Obviously, you're a celebrity. Why run for politics?
I alluded briefly earlier that my father is an immigrant, and he actually grew up on a dirt floor and came to this country because America was looking for doctors, and he'd gone to school on scholarship. His family had zero money. And when he got here, he realized something incredible in world history. The American dream was possible. You were embraced by people in America who respected your ability to contribute. I see that American dream as not quite so shiny as it used to be, but it should be. I'm an embodiment of it as well. So the reason I gave up everything I was doing is because I could not live my life not paying a debt that I think my family owes to this country. And many others around the country feel the same way. We have lived a lifetime of bliss, of having experiences that were unparalleled, perhaps in world history. Let's make sure we pass that on to our children. It's right there. It's so close I can touch it and feel it. Let's not have radical left politicians mess it up.
Yeah, we know something, especially my father comes from Cuba, so I have a similar story there, is when there's bad leadership, it absolutely destroys a country. We see this happening throughout the globe. We see this happening in world history, and that's what we need to avoid here in America, where we need strong, common sense solutions, not only in the Senate, but in the House of Representatives and eventually once again in the White House. I do want to go to the story which broke yesterday, which is it's just fabulous, because you were able to revive a passenger on a flight into Philly. So not only are you running for Senate, but then all of a sudden you're called to duty, and there you are helping to save a life. Walk us through what happened.
Well, I was we were at 35,000 feet. The passenger in front of me starts yelling that she needs help. And the reason she needed help was a gentleman was trying to go to the bathroom. She was next to the galley, and he had collapsed. So I obviously quickly got up, tried to find out what was happening. He had a very thready pulse, very low blood pressure, and really wasn't mentating. He wasn't cooperating. And so these two young flight attendants, one of them was her first month on duty, I believe, ran over. They, again, like so many brave Americans do, they ran towards the problem. So I said, give me some sugar, because the first thing you do when you've got a young person who gets sick is make sure their blood sugar is not too low. It would explain what I had witnessed. She got me a little soda pop, sugar water, and I was able to put a little in his mouth. That quickly gets blood sugar up, but it also gave him a little caffeine and a little fluid. And it started to get him going a bit. And it took me about 10 minutes until he felt well enough, sitting up there on the ground, then finally on that little flight attendant seat, till he felt well enough to go back to his seat. And I have communicated with him since. He's doing well. I think he was both dehydrated and exhausted. He'd driven all night long to get to the airport. But again, what it speaks to, and I've had plenty of these crises. I had one last year at an airport where a gentleman by baggage claim collapsed and had no pulse, and I had to do CPR. But in that instance, the security guards at the airport ran over. They had never done CPR before, but they practiced. They knew what to do. And I think this, again, speaks to our innovativeness of Americans. I have confidence in our people. I have confidence in the grit of the average American. And it's been experienced by me over and over again when I'm in a crisis and folks volunteer. Again, I'm a professional. I'm a doctor. I deal with this a lot. They come over for the first time in their lives and they deliver perfectly. And that's what I witnessed on Saturday.
Well, I got to tell you something. I think that it's very much telling of your character, of your wanting to, help others, serve others. And that's such a wonderful, I think, quality to have. I do hope that man who was dehydrated and you were able to help, I hope he's voting. And if he's voting, I hope he's voting for you. But Dr. Oz, just final thoughts as we wrap up this great interview, as we're going into these last 68 days to the election. When does early voting start? How can people get involved? What's the final stretch looking like?
We're going to do well. Early voting will start towards the end of September. DrOz.com has not only my positions, but a place where you can donate some money to the campaign. Please consider it. This is how we're going to keep our message up and strong and ensure we don't get drowned out by Democrats who raise a lot of money, especially from outside of Pennsylvania. But the most important message I have is one of optimism. Yes, my opponent has far left radical ideas, the furthest left of any candidate for Senate this cycle in a contested race. But I have the ideas that I think speak to our family values. And they'll resonate not just with Republican voters, but they'll resonate with independents. They'll resonate with African Americans in the urban environment. It's going to work for a lot of Americans because these last 18 months have shown us what happens when you don't pay attention to some of the fundamentals of how you run a country. And it's led to 40-year high inflation, energy prices through the roof. In Pennsylvania, a gargantuan crime rate, and open borders led to a fentanyl infusion that has taken the lives of 100,000 Americans. That's 4 times more than died of COVID. These are horrible realities, and it only happened in 18 months. Let's stop it. In medicine, one of the first things you do is stop the bleeding. But let's put our fingers in the hole, stop the bleeding, get us back on our feet again, and allow this country to continue to thrive. It's right there, guys. We can touch it. We can feel it. Get involved. Stay enthused.
Before we go, I just want to get your quick reaction. President Biden is going to be in Philadelphia. He's going to be speaking about the battle for democracy. And as we know that his administration has hit MAGA Republicans hard by basically calling us extreme, calling us semi-fascist. What's your response to that? What do you anticipate coming out of the speech?
Well, Biden spoke already pretty harshly about many Republican voters. I think it's a mistake. We're a diverse group of people. We come at these issues in different ways. Many of us treasure family values, even though we grew up in different kinds of families. And I think a lot of Americans are in pain, Democrats and Republicans, and they want change for very good reason. They don't feel like their Main Street ideals are being served. They feel like there's crony capitalism and people have sort of taken over government who they didn't vote for. They certainly didn't want in there, and they're making decisions that don't align with the values, certainly of people on Main Street here in Pennsylvania. I think respect goes a long way here. You may have a clear view of where you want to head if you're Joe Biden, but don't ignore the wisdom of a lot of Americans who have pretty strong feelings about where we should be headed.
Republicans, let's stay united. Let's make sure we bring independents along, as well as African Americans and Hispanics to support Dr. Oz in this final stretch. I want to thank you so much, sir, for your time and for your willing to take on this big role and fight and make sure that we can win in November.
God bless you. Take care.
God bless.